Hi, my name's Eric, welcome back to my channel. Let's talk once again about Madonna. So far I've reacted to Ray of Light and Like a Prayer, and when I asked you what Madonna album you'd like to see me react to next, you said Erotica and Confessions on a Dance Floor. So today, I'm going to be reacting to Erotica for the very first time and breaking down the album's lyrics, and my next Madonna reaction will be to Confessions. I've also gotten requests to react to Madonna's music videos, so I'll try to get to those sometime soon as well. Before I dive in, I'd appreciate your help in planning the rest of my summer, so please let me know in the comments down below what upcoming album releases you're most excited for. Please check the description for a link to a list of nonprofits that you can donate to. Please subscribe to be here when I post new videos every week, and hit the bell icon to be notified when my videos go live. Without further ado, track number 1 is the title track, Erotica. Ooh, okay. That's what the album's about? We've got these raspy, seductive vocals. This is definitely more hip-hop influence. I like that melody on the chorus. It's very eerie. Okay. Okay, that was really different from Like a Prayer, definitely. Less poppy, definitely more funk and hip-hop leaning. And I'm not sure if she'll pursue this further, but she starts out the album with this diva persona, this mistress. And considering how controversial this subject matter would have been at the time, which is pretty wild considering how tame it is by today's standards, I understand the impulse to want to separate Madonna by name from this subject matter. And that's not to say that she would have been ashamed of this music or that people still wouldn't associate her with it, but this framing device of its album having its own narrator kind of puts this aspect of Madonna's personality into its own separate world. Lyrically, a notable technique that she uses is that she combines physical and emotional ideas. So in the first verse, she talks about wanting to push herself into your mind, and on the one hand, of course, it's this provocative bodily image, but on the other, it's telling us about what she wants to do thematically with this album. Specifically, it feels like she wants to explore the erotic, not just to be provocative, but also to exhume humane and emotional observations from a dimension of life that popular media up to that point was reluctant to see as anything really other than pornographic. And I think that's the same reason why she talks about on the second verse, when you put your hand in the flame, you'll never be the same. Again, accessing this lurid curiosity with the erotic, but finding something more honest. So she opens this album with a song about sadism, basically, to sort of lure us in to some other ideas, or at least that's the impression I get from looking at the other song titles to come. Track number 2 is Fever, and this is a cover of a song that's had a variety of iterations, most notably by Little Willie John, followed by Peggy Lee. Ooh, I wasn't expecting a house take on sort of a 60s jam. Definitely retains the slinkiness and whisperiness. Ooh, it's sort of chill and serene, but also danceable. I like these different directions it's going in instrumentally. That's cool. Okay. Oh, another Romeo and Juliet reference here. Okay, so we've got a fire motif going. Nice. Okay, that was cool how they isolated her vocals there at the end. Also, it's worth mentioning now that Madonna herself co-produced a lot of this album, just like she did on Like a Prayer. And even though these aren't her own lyrics, of course, since it's a cover, I'm interested to see how they fit into the album thematically, because even at the time, this was sort of a nostalgic, sort of euphemistic take on love and the fire of passion. What's interesting though is because this song was taken from another time, it almost feels thematically like the opposite of the opener. Erotica was about finding the love in an overtly sexual situation, but this song is about finding the sex underlying these overt declarations of love. Because on paper, a lot of these lyrics are basically just cute. You are my sunlight, you don't know how much I love you, that sort of stuff. There's even a Romeo and Juliet reference, just like Cherish, which was another nostalgic leaning Madonna song. But then with the house beat, we place it in the context of a club and of dancing. So if you're in the club and you are passionately dancing to this song, then the song to you becomes about the heat of dance. So it's fun how we have these different dimensions stacked on top of each other. Track number 3 is Bye Bye Baby. Oh, wait, that was from Love Song. Okay, cool. Sounds like her vocals are pitch shifted. The production definitely sounds like early 90s hip hop. Okay, there's definitely a sample of a hip hop song in there. I can't name it. If you know it, let me know. Sonically, the album is pretty chill so far. Oh, interesting. So this partner's sadism is emotional. Haha. Okay, so that was a breakup song, which I wasn't expecting from an album that, at least, you assume it's going to be all about love and indulgence and, enjoying yourself. And doesn't sound like she's having fun here, except for, the inevitable pleasure of letting go of a partner who sucks. But, it's still a breakup song. Right off the bat, that connection to Love Song from Like a Prayer is super fun. I love these connections that she keeps consistently drawing thematically and lyrically across her albums, and I will look for those as we go along and listen to more of her albums together. For the most part, this is a pretty straightforward breakup song, but one moment where she more explicitly connects the lyrics to the broader themes of the album is on the bridge when I believe she talks about not wanting to stoke the flames of this person's ego. On Fever, flames obviously were passion, but now that passionate, confident flame of this love has become too bright and has burned her. On the opener, she talked about touching the flame and also about how her or Dita's expression of love to a partner was exerting power or control over them. But it's evident from this song that the entangling of love and power is risky. The flame needs to be contained, otherwise you end up with a power imbalance. Track number 4 is Deeper and Deeper. Ooh, there we go. Ooh. This actually was more along the lines of what I was expecting from this album. Is that from The Sound of Music? Ooh. So this is really fun. Ooh, we've got a Spanish guitar breakdown here. That's very Madonna. Okay, I think that might be my favorite so far. Definitely the most danceable, the most indulgent, I think. There were a lot more moments to it. There were multiple drops, different changes in instrumentation, more harmonies. I really, really enjoyed that. And another thing that I like is that this song's title uses the same device that shows up on the opener. We think it's just about a physical experience, but it's actually talking about emotions. So of course, deeper and deeper refers to falling deeper and deeper in love, and this double entendre implies then that the physical basically is a conduit to the emotional. And while I'm sure there were plenty of other works of art by the early 90s that were complex and provocative in their explorations of love, for an artist at Madonna's level of fame and repute to share a sex-positive message, especially at this time, probably would have been a big deal. On the first verse, there was a moment that I thought was kind of odd, but ended up actually connecting thematically. She picks up a line from Do Re Mi, I believe, from The Sound of Music, and then connects that to the idea of teaching things to kids, which is the original context of that scene in The Sound of Music, and talks about the ways that her parents taught her ways of thinking about love and relationships. One of those messages comes on the bridge when she talks about having to let her father mold her. And again, we have this reemergence of her exploration of her troubled relationship with her father, just like on Like a Prayer. And then that difficult relationship models a top-down power dynamic that now Madonna is subverting by claiming her power on the title track. Track number 5 is Where Life Begins. Okay. Okay, so it's like an invitation. Definitely more in line with a song like Erotica. Again, that's where you find love. She did not. Okay, there's fire again. There's a lot of puns on this song. I appreciate that. Okay, again, another really chill, sort of slinky track. I think the song was meant to be funny in a lot of places because there were so many puns. Like, there was a KFC pun. Iconic. But in any case, this is another instance of Madonna finding this emotional nuance in an otherwise straightforwardly lurid scenario. Because she's saying, like, why are you so afraid of embracing my body when it's where life comes from and the source of love, you know? She's saying it's not sinful or shameful, so, like, chill out, like, enjoy. And the puns, again, do make sense because so much of the central trope of this album is its wit, bringing together ideas that are conventionally thought of as, you know, lustful and dirty, and then ideas of love and purity and wholesomeness. And she opens the song sort of in a deferential, almost teacherly way, basically apologizing for what she's about to say. Again, acknowledging the inevitable pearl-clutching backlash that this would generate, but throwing in a pun about dining room conversation as a wink to the camera. So in that way, Erotica, the album, might be a counterpoint to Like a Prayer, because if Like a Prayer was about doubt in life and in love and associating that doubt with sin, then this album is about taking things that are thought of as sinful and finding confidence and purity and love in them. Track number 6 is Bad Girl. Okay, back at it with the hip-hop beats. Definitely R&B vibes. She doesn't sound like a very bad girl. Okay. I wasn't expecting this much vulnerability on this album. Surprising amount of moralizing here. Okay, yeah, definitely spending a lot of time on this album in a place of emotional vulnerability, sort of in breakup album territory, which I was definitely not expecting on the surface of this album. To me, this song is the flip side, the caveat to the opener, because we have yet another callback to that line from Erotica where she talks about touching the fire and not being able to go back. When Madonna says on the second verse, "Something happened and I can't go back. I fall apart every time you hand your heart out to me." Because Erotica, the song, and I guess the album too, was about taking this stigmatized life experience and finding the good in it. But now she's finding the danger in it. She's been smoking and drinking and overindulging. And these mistakes that she's been making by overindulging are now hurting her relationship. So between this song and Bye Bye Baby, we have two different views of how taking on this indulgent view of love can have consequences in a relationship, specifically when you go too far. Track number 7 is Waiting.
Well, I know from experience that if you have to ask for something more than once or twice, it wasn't yours in the first place. Baby, you're a little good, and you help me like no other. Baby, tell me why.
So you have this mutual hurt in this relationship. This is definitely really R&B leaning, a lot of these songs.
I wish I could believe you.
There's a whole lot of sort of smoky talking on this album. Again, it's interesting, the song sounds so slinky and sensual, but is sad. Definitely an interesting genre fusion going on here because we have the dance pop that we expect from Madonna, but also some R&B and trip hop leanings as well. So Erotica really is, in large part, a breakup album, and if I may do some layman's psychoanalysis, I would imagine that that relates to the themes of the first track. On that track, she said that her expression of love was her exertion of control. Here, she struggles with letting a relationship go and letting go of that control. So if love is tied to control, then losing love is losing control. It's interesting to me that Erotica as a whole is framed as provocative and lurid and powerful when she spends so much of the album in a low place emotionally, so I'm fascinated to see where she goes from here. Track number 8 is Thief of Hearts. Ha! Okay, sounds like she's getting into like a bottle throwing fight at the club. Someone's trying to steal her man. Ooh.
Sit your ass down.
That was fun. I was not expecting that direction. And what it tells us too is that not only is love a power relationship, but it's also a competition. And Madonna's got a challenger on her hands. There's this really funny moment on the second verse when she says, "Here she comes, a little Miss Black Widow. First she spins her web and she's stealing your boyfriend." It's just so perfect how she abandons the metaphor because she's just sick of it. Like, I don't want to talk about this Black Widow anymore. Just like, get rid of her. But in that same verse, she talks about the Black Widow acting all dejected, which is weird coming off of a song where she herself was dejected and talking about wanting someone back. I mean, so much of how she describes this character and criticizes her is very closely reflective of how she has portrayed herself over the rest of the album so far. She talks about this character thinking she can get what she wants and exerting her control over people, so this kind of feels like her insecurity jumping out. Track number 9 is Words. This feels like it could be directed at a lot of people. Again, a lot of vulnerability here.
What?
So we have that typewriter in the background, which tells me that this might be about like journalism or, her critics, but it kind of feels like it could be directed, like I said, at a lot of people. But in that way, the song kind of feels like it describes part of the motivation that Madonna had for making this album, sort of working against the harsh words of people who have hurt her, whether it be publicly or, her family or her exes. Because from what she's talked about so far, we would expect that she's talking about a partner, this ex hurting her with their words, but I don't think the ex would be using a typewriter. That would be the newspapers. But just generally, it feels like she's saying, here's the album, this is my statement about myself, my sexuality, my vulnerability, my power, and you can keep your opinions to yourself. Track number 10 is Rain. Great use of her lower register here. It's definitely got some 80s sounds, but also feels like it could almost fit in like the 2000s. I love the strings that have been introduced here. Ooh, key change. And of course, we end the song with actual rain sounds. Okay, so whereas before we had love, or physical love specifically, as an expression of power, or worse, a way of hurting someone else, here we have love as a healing force. Because rain in pop music is the image of a fresh start. By now we've been through 9 tracks of pain and hurt from bad love, and now we're seeing good love heal the wounds of that bad love. And in that spoken passage of this song, she talks about waiting and anticipating and building up to something. So there could also be a way that this album tracks a physical experience of anticipation being released as pleasure. So within that framework, that's the moment that we've arrived at. Track number 11 is Why Is It So Hard? Good question. Again, another change in scope here. Definitely some strong reggae influence. I don't know if I would have believed you if you had told me that there were a reggae song on here. But from my limited understanding of reggae, a theme of peace and unity is pretty common in that genre, so it makes sense that she would apply that here. So after Rain, this moment of cleansing and release, we have this sort of clarity and openness. It's this clear-eyed, paradisiacal optimism that Madonna set up on the opener, specifically in her view of love. This album as a whole is fundamentally about love, as is much of Madonna's music, but this is an exploded view of love that isn't just between, intimate partners, but among everyone socially. In a sort of self-referential way, she asks why we need to experience pain when it's much of what she's been experiencing intentionally and unintentionally throughout this album. And now that Rain has brought her a newfound sense of clarity, she asks, what am I doing? What are we all doing? Track number 12 is In This Life, and just a heads up, I'm going to be skipping the song Did You Do It, because as far as I can tell, it's not included in the standard version of the album, and most people consider this version of the album without it to be the definitive version and the better version. But if I should check the song out anyway another time, please let me know. Oh, I wonder if this is related to Spanish Eyes. So she's spreading his message after his death and sharing his impact on her. So now, towards the end of the album, she's broadened the scope of her messages about love, not just to the idea of love, like I mentioned, between partners, but also love of other people, love of your neighbor. I believe on this song she is writing about the same friend that she wrote about on Spanish Eyes from Like a Prayer, a friend who she lost to AIDS. And as some of you let me know in the comments, Madonna was outspoken about the AIDS crisis and wanted to share information with people about it. And I imagine that's the same thing that motivates the bridge on this song when she says, ignorance is not bliss. Her whole thing here is that she wants to raise awareness. And the strategy she uses to raise awareness is to humanize her late friend and to talk about her relationship with him and how good of an influence he was on her and how close she felt to him. So by making the experience of the AIDS crisis personal and making an emotional appeal, she performs another act of advocacy. The final track, track number 13, is Secret Garden. Here we've got jazz instrumentation. That piano is gorgeous. Okay, and that is how the album ends. I love gardens as an image because they're just so loaded metaphorically. Phoebe Bridgers' Garden Song obviously is another great example of this. And so just like on Where Life Begins, Madonna focuses on the life-giving aspect of love. She embodies the growth of a garden. She says that she will create life, literally, but also by revitalizing herself and others. She talks about being trampled on by boots and still being resilient, just like on Words. So it feels like ultimately the message here is that love in all of its forms and dimensions, when combined with an awareness of and a respect for other people, is a powerful force for good personally and socially. Overall, I think this album leans more cohesive like Ray of Light, but still has a nice variety of techniques like on Like a Prayer. It's not quite as provocative as you would imagine from the title, but that's because, we are modern audiences and this album was made in a very different context. So I appreciate the messages that she shared on this album. I really enjoyed most, I think, the dance-leaning moments on this album, but I think she really honed in on her chiller, more surreal sound on Ray of Light later on. And like I mentioned, since I do enjoy her more dance-leaning stuff, I'm really looking forward to talking about Confessions on a Dance Floor. I cannot wait to hear that whole album. The only song I've heard from it so far is Hung Up, and that is a banger. Thank you so much for recommending this album to me. I really enjoyed it. But like I said at the beginning of the video, please let me know in the comments down below if there are any other upcoming releases you'd like to see me react to. Please subscribe to be here when I post new videos every week. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you are staying safe and healthy. And until next time, that's it.